According to an article by the National Center for Health Statistics, approximately 14 out of every 100,000 U.S. citizens will decide to take their life over the next year. That's 3,280 lives. Everyone wants to enjoy life, but it's much easier said than done. We want to wake up excited, never work a day in our life, and be valued. Today I want to present the very ideas that gave me this, and I would say more. Because if we find happiness, I mean true happiness, then success and value, it'll follow. You see, I planned on being in the United States Air Force for all my childhood. My dad was in the Air Force. You admire somebody, and that was who I admired, my dad. Unfortunately, in high school, my AFJROTC instructor, he was lost to suicide. It was after this where I delayed my calling. I had a falling out. But eventually I would decide to go back in, and halfway through basic training, due to me being a military dependent, of course, they found an intermittent history of ADHD. Actually, to be exact, 7 months of ADHD medication over the course of 10 years. As you can tell by my tone, I felt betrayed. And it was from this point where I was utterly crushed in a rock bottom state that these ideas saved me. I mean, happiness felt pretty far from where I was, but it ended up being with me all along. I promise it's not as corny as it sounds. Happiness is just closer for most people than we think. It's in plain sight, even. Prior to middle school, people will find this. According to Ashley Vance's biography on Elon Musk claimed that he was dreaming of rocket science when he was just a child. And this is a kid that grew up in South Africa, a country that the space program did not send up a satellite until 2009. And Elon Musk is not a young buck. Elon Musk is in his 50s or near his 50s. Another famous name you might recognize is Freddie Mercury. In the 2018 biographic Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie actually fails to mention that Freddie Mercury, despite the civil unrest in his part of the world, that being Tanzania and Zanzibar, he took music lessons, and as you can guess, he was not too shabby. Think back to the happiest you've ever been. And it's important to think of to a point where you were independent, because when you're with somebody else, inherently you're going to be more focused on the partnership rather than you as an individual, as you should be. In a 2019 article, Happiness, Life Satisfaction, Well-Being, a survey designed and response analysis, the European Journal of Comparative Economics finds that most individuals achieve all three through their hobbies. Not overall economic success, as you might think. Because you see, if you pursue nothing that, or at least by this study, if you only pursue economic success thinking that happiness will come afterwards, you're likely going to look back on a life of a string of failures, when you could be right now be collecting a series of successes, no matter how small. And strictly on the basis of intuition, while we're at it, and common sense, if you will, there are more people than there are opportunities. So living and investing in yourself is going to be infinitely more satisfying than chasing some predestined path or career. And despite this figurative ceiling we have, a path of desirable difficulty is preferable. But how can we challenge ourselves without falling into this glass half empty trap? And I would say, or rather I have found, that determination will always be that answer. In Charles Duhigg's book, Power of Habits, he goes over the fact that motivation is temporary. It is only by adhering to habits that serve your bigger goals that one can find these bigger goals. They are met. In another book called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer, structuring a routine, just by structuring a routine, it's just a simple schedule, 30 minutes a day to 3 hours in a day, depending on how he was feeling, for over a year. Not over a year, under a year, just slightly over a year, he would be crowned the United States memory champion. A thing that I am not, unfortunately. Determination is not just writing down in your calendar, though. Determination is constant self-examination. And I hate that rhymed. I really do. But according to the 2019 article, Success Never Comes in a Day, the Society of Urological Nurses and Associates requires certification and recertification annually. This ensures that all their members deliver quality service across the board. It is because of organizations like these, and they exist in many fields, that the status of professionalism in those fields is infinitely raised. It makes you trust doctors more. It makes you trust engineers more. It makes you trust your lawyer more when they're a part of organizations that require them to keep up with these rigorous certifications. And it also, when in life and death situations, as many of these professions often include, you'll find more often than not, the correct decision is chosen. You know what? You're not going to find it because it's never going to be talked about because it's not a disaster. It's not news. But it can be easy if you have all this quality experience and you can quantifiably say, you can concrete evidence, this is what I know. This is why my opinion matters. You cannot argue with this. And you just kind of throw it in people's faces. That can be unattractive, and you're not going to be able to work with a lot of people. And that's why my final lesson, the lesson that I'm still learning, is so important. And that is to be a better friend. Without a network of peers and like-minded individuals, and when I say like-minded, not people who necessarily agree with you, but people who are interested in the same field, rather. Without people like this, it's going to be unlikely that you develop as a professional. In Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he tells the story of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, a Brazilian politician that created a political party, lobbied with that political party all the way up with the political incumbents that were in office at the time, making insanely beneficial agreements with each, and went on to be president for 10 years. It's easy to see with somebody so vulnerable to media or public outrage, you have to have pretty good habits to keep yourself in check and avoid the pitfalls of public outcry. He was known and beloved by Brazil throughout his term, many people even referring to him as just Lula. Furthermore, in their 2004 article, Friendship and Advice Networks in the Context of Changing Professional Values, it is elaborated on the crucial part of platonic relationships in the workplace. And outside the workplace, friendship can be important for validation. I mean, modern day social media, for example, not a lot of people use Facebook anymore, but Twitter, you have Twitter, Instagram, you have Snapchat. People are just constantly posting stuff and saying, look at me, or tell me what you think of what I'm doing. The fact that this exists and the dystopia that's created is reviewed in a 2017 article called Desperately Seeking Validation. The publication, The Psychologist, details the contemporary communication and the very fact that exists, that yearning for attention from strangers, is all the more proof that we need validation from others. It may vary from individual to individual, but in the end, the things that make us content are the things that are going to further our value in life. It's going to make us happy, might even make us successful. But many fail to identify them. To find what makes you happy, again, finding what makes you happy is going to be making you successful. Being successful is going to mean you have value. You can point to something and say, look at what I did. This is what I can do, what I can bring to my community. And when you have that value, you're validated. You can look around and you can say, hey, what was I doing back in this year or when I was this age? And you can point to it and say, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. And it got me here. So find what genuinely makes you happy. Be determined to achieve your goals and invest in people who will in turn invest in you. Because it cannot be overstated. The sources I mentioned today unequivocally impacted my life. And I just want to share that knowledge. And there's a lot to unpack. And some of you have heard all this before, and maybe some of you want to learn more on your own. All I ask is you consider 3 things. 1, dedicate a significant part of the day to explore your interests. 2, build a schedule that contributes to your larger goals. Small as waking up at a certain time in the morning and doing a workout or writing a paper at a certain time. Structure your life in a way that serves your future. And lastly, through all of that, as busy as you'll be, invest in others. Thank you.